Hi everyone, it's Haley. Today I'm going to be going over the books I found for Elements of Art. So to start, I have a couple of books based on color. To start, I have this book called The Way I Feel. It is written and illustrated by Janin Kane. I chose this book. As you go throughout this book, it displays a character in a different way and also enhances that to the reader using color. So for instance, this one is about being silly, so it's a lot of bright colors on that. This one's about being scared, so it's dark, kind of spooky, eerie colors. This one's disappointed, so it's kind of like that gross, icky color of like a greenish brown. Happy is obviously going to be the bright yellow colors. Sad will also be like a gloomy green. Angry is like a bold red. Thankful is like a warm, cozy, like orangey yellow. Frustrated is also another gloomy color, and so on and so forth. It pretty much showcases an emotion as a different color for like character development. This book could also be like used for value. Like if you get up close to these, you can see like there's a lot of like shadow and a lot of shading. On this page, there's a lot of different like hues of yellow, and it kind of gives a little bit of a depth in these pictures and images. And yeah, that's my first book for color. The second book I have is called Hello Red Fox. This is by Eric Carey. Obviously by the front cover, most would be a little confused because it says Red Fox, but it is green. But as you go throughout this book, it's pretty much an activity book which plays tricks on kids' eyes. This is a color book showcasing the color wheel and how staring at one color for a certain amount of time can actually flip it to the opposite side of the color wheel when looking at something else. So, for instance, this page, and it goes throughout the book the same way. So as an example, this one, it's pretty much telling you to stare at this particular dot on this image for a certain amount of time, which I think it's like 10 seconds. And then you come over here and look at this dot, and it's supposed to change the green fox to a red fox, so on and so forth. The yellow butterfly changed to like a purpley blue butterfly. The blue cat will change to an orange cat. The red snake will turn to a green one. The purple bird will turn into a yellow bird. So on and so forth. You'll go through the colors with different sets of animals. So each page will showcase a different character as well as a different color and get them involved, and also be a fun little activity to keep their attention as you go through to find different colors on the pages. I think this book could also work for texture. As you can see, it doesn't look like it's like a furry fox. Like it has almost like a leaf texture just because it's the color green. And it's the same as you go throughout different pages. So for instance, the snake, it doesn't showcase like scales. It's almost like a flowery pattern to show the colors instead of scales. So it's like a fun little way to identify these different animals. Okay. Next I have books that are for line. My first one is Grandpa Green by Lane Smith. I felt like this book was really good for line. In this book, all of the major things that are happening within the plot are made in like these hedge bush figures, but the stuff that is more simple, that doesn't need to like require a lot of focus or a lot of attention drawn to it, they're made like with these very distinct lines, and they're very, very simple images, whereas these bushes kind of create an eye drawing effect to them. Same goes throughout this. He's got a very simple body, but really the main focus goes towards identifying who the characters in the book are. But I also thought this book could work for texture again. The little bushes kind of have like a little grassy type of look, like they feel like that. And it also solidifies that that's what they are. They aren't just like green blobs on a page, they're actually bushes. This book actually has like a deeper meaning. It's about, obviously, Grandpa Green. His memories are portrayed with these the bushes, and as you go throughout the books and the pages, some of the stuff becomes more unclear, or some begin to disappear. As you get older, sometimes you forget or your memories fade. So yeah, that is my first line book. My next one is Camille and the Sunflowers. It is by Lawrence Onholt. I thought this one showcased line. If you are familiar with Vincent van Gogh, all of his paintings have a very distinct line shape. There's a particular, the Starry Night one, the way he draws his lines and makes like a swirly effect, it's a really cool way, and I'm not finding it in this book right now, but it's going through his most famous paintings and pretty much showcases how Camille has interacted with him in some way. But on these pages, there's a very distinct way he draws lines to create depth. And I also think this book showcases value again. There's a lot of good shading, and you can tell like with distance and depth. Like up close is very like the bright color, but as you go back farther, it starts to fade out into a more of a pastel color to show that they're getting farther away from whatever it might be, as well as there's a lot of shadow showing like his darkness in the back. Up front is a little bit of a lighter color. And it goes through, and it also shows like some of the portraits, and it shows how Camille has gotten to know the person that the portrait is about. So it's also a little bit of a history lesson that could be tied to even like an art activity about Vincent van Gogh. Okay. Next, I have books for value. Value has a lot to do with like shading, hues, colors, and can like kind of showcase depth also. My first book is called Flashlight. It's by Betsy James and illustrated by Stacy Chouette. Don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I'm gonna go with it. So this one also shows shadow. Like obviously with a flashlight, you're going to have like a spotlight, and then everything behind it is either going to be a shadow or portrayed in a different shade of a color. So this book is pretty much about a girl in the dark, and she's given a flashlight from her grandpa to see. And like on these pages, it shows like obviously the flashlight is shining from this corner. And it can also teach kids like direction, and it could be a fun activity asking like, where is the flashlight shining from? Which direction is it pointing? So they would know it's coming from here and going up. It also shows skin tone very well and shadow. But I think it also enhances the plot of the story. As you go through, it shows like different places where she's shining her flashlight and what she uses her flashlight for, because she can't see, but she's creating these very distinct images so that she can see certain things. And the illustrator in this book went into very like distinct detail. With her flashlight, you can see like the shadows of the chair on the tablecloth, the shadows of the pillow on the chair. Just a really good way of showing that with a light source, you're going to have shadows in different shades of color. I think this book also does a good job of showing texture. Again, all of the pages kind of have a little bit of a textured look on them. For instance, this one, it kind of has like a hatched little design on there, with like the shine of the flashlight. And it also can showcase like the material of the clothes. And for instance, this one, she has her little toy teddy bears. You can see like the little fibers and the hairs on them. It's just a super cute little book. My next book for value is called The Man in the Moon. It is by William Joyce. In this book, I thought that there was a lot of contrast on each of the pages. Instead of just having like all bright colors or all dark colors, there's both. So obviously you have the very dark background but a very bright image in the middle to draw your eye to it, as well as having this dark page and a light page over here to kind of even it out. On some of the images, there's a lot of shading to showcase depth. For instance, this one is an image of them being underwater and having a light source shine through this hole to kind of brighten up this image. So underwater, it's obviously very dark unless you have a light to go through it. I think this book also could coordinate to color, because it has like obviously very dark ones, very light ones, and then for like shading and value, obviously. This one also could have go towards emotions. This one has to do with nightmare, and all the characters in this book, their names have to do with a certain color. For instance, this page, this one is about a character named Darkness, and for obvious reasons you could see why his name would be Darkness, but it also has a lot of different like shades of like that dark gray and black to kind of emphasize his emotion throughout the book. Okay. My next books are shape books. The first one I have is That Pesky Rat by Lauren Child. I picked this one out as a shape book because it has like obviously distinct little squares, and throughout the book it has just adorable little designs that you can really use as a shape project, because as you go through you could just identify with the class like, what is this, and then have them recite like, it is a triangle, these are rectangles, so on and so forth. And this one also uses shapes on the pages to kind of display the words throughout, as well as a cool way to showcase movement a little bit. And then I think this shape book could also work towards texture. A lot of the pages on here are like a picture collage, where not all of them look like they fit, but they have just like a lot going on, a lot to draw your eye towards. Like the floor is something different, the wallpaper is something different, her dress is something different. Not everything seems to look like they fit in one place. And with the whole picture collage thing, this is kind of what I'm talking about. It's got like a picture of a background, but pasted on top of it's like a couch, and it's got little distinct cushions and so on. But it also has a lot of bright color, and it has some contrast in there too, just to kind of keep your focus going from one place to another, because there's a lot going on in these books, and there's a lot of different patterns, but like they're very simplistic drawings of faces. They have like their little rosy cheeks and everything, but the background and what the illustrator chose to paste with patterns and everything is what catches the eye the most, and it goes along with the words on the page. The next book I have for shape is Isabella's Garden. It's by Glenda Millard and illustrated by Rebecca Cool. I picked this one for shape just because it has, on every page, each person has like different shapes on what they're wearing. Like this girl has little polka dots, which are like circles. This girl's got rectangles with little textured images. So this book could also go for a lot of texture and a lot of line. Since this is about a garden, this book works with plot and kind of also teaches kids like what it takes for a seed to grow into a healthy plant. This book uses a lot of color, showing like the underground where the seeds are, where they're on the ground, and then the sky. And I think the words on each page kind of follow with the idea and the vision that the author wants you to see. So it says on this page, "This is the rain that soaks the seeds that sleep in the soil, all dark and deep in Isabella's garden." So obviously it's raining, and obviously you can see the water soaking through the ground to find the seeds so they can grow. Okay. So those are my shape books. Next I have books for form. My first one is Stella Luna by Janelle Cannon. I picked this one just because the illustrator of this book went into so much detail to showcase little images of bats. Like every image in here just looks so real, and they're just like formed beautifully, like these birds. Like that does not look like an illustration, that looks like a picture. Let's see. This one could also work for value. It shows a lot of like depth. Like obviously these birds are up in a tree, but the background is like darker, and you can kind of see some shadows behind, showing that there's trees behind it and like below. Could also be for texture. As you can see, the little like fur, like it's a little fur, you just want to like pet them. But I think this book could work for setting. Setting. And throughout the book, they are moving around. It's showing like where bats fly and where the birds even fly. So like they're at they're on a nest at some points, they're on the end of a tree branch on some, and it kind of has a little bit of a fun thing. Like you can see, like it's the facial expressions of the bat. He's shocked, so you could do something for like emotion, how facial expressions can show what you're feeling. My next book for form is called Grandpa's Teeth by Rod Clement. I chose this as a book for form. It is about a grandpa that either has his teeth stolen or they're lost or he just cannot find them. And you don't realize how much your teeth form your face. So I thought this was a kind of like funny, uplifting to show like the grandpa without his teeth versus like grandpa with his teeth, as you can see in this little family image. It's just really cute and funny. I think it enhances character because when you're going throughout, you can see how his different family members are reacting to, oh, Grandpa, where's your teeth? Or, oh, Dad, where's your teeth at? Because they are so used to seeing it in his little cup of water. But notice that it's not there, so they began to look in all different places. And it also shows like how teeth can really affect what you look like, and it could also be a fun activity to teach kids, like brush your teeth twice a day for 2 minutes, because like you don't want to be missing your teeth. Or even like an activity about how when you lose your teeth, you could do like a tooth fairy activity or something like that. This one also could go for value. There's a lot of different shading on people's faces, so where you can see like where the light's hitting them, and then obviously their shadows are in the background, and it just gives them a brighter skin tone from where the light is hitting it, and darker where they have some shade. Okay. My next set of books are for texture. My first one is called Dandelions. It's written by Eve Bunting and illustrated by Greg Shedd. This book kind of sets the mood to the 1800s when families had to travel west to find a new life. So they have their little, like their carriages and their oxes and cows and bulls to carry them onward to like find a new spot on the prairie, pretty much. I kind of compare it to like Little House on the Prairie. So the reason I chose this book for texture is every page, the illustrations, they look like they've been drawn on a canvas. Canvas has like that hatched kind of scratchy feel, and there's little bumps. You can kind of tell a little bit, but it just looks like it's been painted on a canvas, but yet it's just on a piece of paper. I think this one could also go for line and for shape. For instance, on the pages of the house, you can see like the lines from like the shiplap on the outsides, the lines from the curtains, the lines from the little bench, the lines from the rods that are holding up for support, and also has some pretty color in here. It's kind of got that ombre effect for like hue and value. So this book could honestly work for a lot of different things, and it's also teaching kids that not everything's easy. Like they might go home and get to watch TV, and these days they had to work for what they got. And also there's a lot of traveling, and we can drive cars now. Like these people had to have their animals transport them on a wagon, and we don't realize how precious time is until Like it maybe takes 5 minutes to get to school in a vehicle versus it might take an hour on a little carriage. My next book for texture is called Thank You Brother Bear. It's by Hans Baumann and illustrated by Eric Carle. For instance, this is just like the opening page. It has a lot of texture going on here with different splotches. I could compare it to the texture of like what a football might feel like. It's got those little bumps. You just want to like hold on to it. And with this book in particular, I thought this was really cool. It takes like familiar objects you see every day and puts a different texture and layers, different textures with different colors on them, which I thought was very interesting. So for instance, you might see a tree and like think leaves, you know, but with these trees they just got these like zigzag and splotchy texture to it. Like you can obviously tell that it's a tree, but it's not what we familiarize ourselves with as what a tree might feel like. So I thought that was kind of cool. And it also has to do with kind of like implied lines and implied images. You can, for instance, like back to those trees, you can obviously tell that they're trees with the implied lines, but without like the color, some people might not realize that that's what the illustrator was intending for you to vision. And I think this one also could work for plot. It just has like a cute storyline of how the brother bear goes throughout the story and meets these different animals along the way and travels through the forest. And again, the closing page is the same as the opening. It has that texture. And this page actually has a little bit of a feel to it. Whereas instead of you're just filling a piece of paper, you've got a little bit of a bumpy texture. On here's like a picture of like a wolf, I assume, unless that's a dog. But it has like the lines to showcase like its own fur. And the bumpy kind of patches kind of shows like what they wear. And then they're sitting on like some stone ground, which you can kind of tell. But it has like a lot of different like variations of color, and not everything's bright. There are some dark patches. There are some, like for instance, like this is there's a lot of contrast going on. Is really what I'm trying to say here. So like there's some orange, but then like on the opposite side of the color wheel would be like a blue. So there's like contrast, and like happy medium would be like the brown. Okay. And last, I have my books for space. My first book is The Quilt Maker's Gift. It's by Jeff Brombo and illustrated by Gail DeMarkin. I'm gonna assume that's how you say that. This book in particular, I felt like this for space. The page is just filled with all different types of things. Your eyes are just going. They're drawn to everywhere. They're looking all over the place. There's just a lot going on every page. Like there's a storyline going on up here, there's an image here, images here, and so on. And every page, it just has some eye-catching thing, whether it's a dark image like this one, or a bright one like this. Like, holy cow, there's just a lot going on in this page. It could almost look like a I Spy book. You could just make it a quiz and just ask them to find certain things. It's like a focus activity, because there's a lot going on and a lot of bright colors. So this book could also work with color, it could work with texture, it could work with value, it could almost work with every single element of art there is. This book also can show like movement. Like this is like a little scene of this guy walking and turning and going. But it looks like there's a lot of people, but when you're teaching kids, you can just showcase that this dude is walking away, showing his movement on how he gets from one place to another. And then my last book for space is called Rosie's Fiddle, and it is by Phyllis Root and illustrated by Kevin O'Malley, something like that. I chose this one for space. There's a lot of depth and a lot of like blurred images to showcase like what's up close, what's far away. So for instance, this is a very up close image of a man's face, but in the background you can see that she is farther away because she's not as close up as this man is. There's also a lot of contrast on here having to do with different types of color on the color wheel. So for instance, there's a lot of orange and red, but on the opposite side of the color wheel is like blues and greens. But this book is really, it just has like a plot. I'll actually read the little. Okay. Folks said Rosie could fiddle the flowers out of their buds. He said she could fiddle the stone out of the ground. Folks said Rosie O'Grady could out-fiddle the devil himself, and that was a dangerous thing to say. So pretty much it's just a competition between whether Rosie can out-fiddle the devil. But yes, I think this is a good book to do for space. It just, all the images like fill up the page regardless of where the words are. Like for instance, you can see like this is like the darkness of the corn that she's picking in this image. But overall, a lot of the books that I found this week could really go one way or the other. A lot of them showcase a lot of different colors, a lot of different variations of color for value even. There's a lot of things for form, a lot of shapes, a lot of lines, a lot of color. And I think it's important to have all of those in children's books because having a very eye-catching book is why kids either check out a book at the library or want to read them. As they're learning, they are also able to realize there's like depth, that there's reasons that there's not just like 5 or 6 colors, there's different shades, there's different shadows produced by different colors on the page. And I think it's important to teach them about the elements of art as they're going through elementary school. So yeah, those are the books I found for the elements of art for this week. Thank you.